It's time for Two Catholic Dudes. Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Ryan Klaus.
My name is Danny Cleary.
This is Two Catholic Dudes. This is episode number 11, and as always, we're not priests, we're not theologians, we're just two Catholic dudes, and we're talking about our faith.
Wow, that was a great Vin Scully impression.
It's the best I can do. I'm not an impressionist, but
awesome.
That's what I got.
Well, today we are talking about commitment and priority and
sports.
Because today's episode is, we're calling it Sundays Are for Football.
For football?
Anyways, you can see we got all the sports equipment here on our table. We're wearing our sports attire. I'm wearing a Rams shirt. I'm a fan of the Rams.
I got a Dodger shirt that's a little bit too small because I haven't worn it for a long time.
So yeah, we're talking about all things sports and commitment, priority, all kinds of different things today. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. Got a little theme podcast for you guys. We're not the best at sports, but that's okay. We'll probably talk about our sports life as growing
Let's
up.
get into it if we're just going to go into it like that. Give me an example.
Let's get a little update before we get into the sports, right? Because I feel like no one's heard about the coffee update for a long time.
True.
I have progressed in my coffee adventure here, and I actually bought a coffee maker the other day.
Wow.
I know. Quite a monumentous
occasion. Is it a Keurig or like a Mr. Coffee?
It's like a Mr. Coffee.
So it's like old school, like
the
pot, and you fill it with the water, not just like a pop the thing in.
Right, because
I actually like those better.
The environment,
They're better for guests.
Save the world. And for guests, sure. I don't know how to use it, so you're going to have to show me how to do that. But I'm kind of digging coffee now, and I'm feeling like I need it, which is a bad thing. But
you're like, my energy is so low.
Right? We
did say that.
Yeah.
We went to mass before this. I was very grumpy because I am in the morning, but we were both like, we need to get coffee.
Danny was so grumpy, and we decided to go to mass this morning because we try to pray before each episode, and we remembered that we forgot to pray before one episode. We don't remember which. We won't tell you which, but that we felt like that was our worst episode when we didn't pray. So we said, well, what would be a more beautiful way to start the podcast, our day off, is to start with mass.
Yeah, and there's a parish really close to Ryan's house that it's like they have mass at 8:00, so it was like perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we did that, and we got our coffee, and we're feeling good, and we're ready to talk about sports.
Yeah. So let's. Speaking of the coffee update, though, we're still doing Pete's today.
Oh yeah, we got Pete's today. Because I haven't taken it out of the box yet.
Perfect.
You show me how to do it later.
I'll show you later. Okay, so let's do sports. That's what we're talking about. Did you play sports as a kid?
I did. Did you?
I did.
Were you good?
No.
I bet you were better than me because I was real bad. Real bad. Yeah. Tell me your sports stories first because I'm going to tell you and you're going to be like, whoa, you were so bad.
Yeah, I didn't really hit my athletic prime. Like I'm pretty athletic now, as we've talked about before. I'm a professional wrestler, so I like hit my athletic stride in my 20s. So when I was
you're in your 20s now.
That's what I'm saying. I'm in my late 20s.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying like when I hit like 20, then I started to really get athletic.
Okay.
So when I was like in high school, I played soccer, was my number one sport, and I played a little bit of baseball. Not great at that one, and then I played basketball.
Let me ask you. Well, baseball. What position did you play?
Right field, which in Little League, not that important.
Nobody hits the right field.
Nobody hits it that far. And
where did you bat? Like what number?
Like 16.
That's not a correct number.
I don't know how many players play baseball.
Nine. There's nine.
I was 9.
Okay. Sure.
In Little League, is there more? No, you can only have 9.
No.
Wow. Baseball is not my sport.
I heard that your dad was the coach, though.
Oh, multiple times. See, this is the most embarrassing part about when I played baseball. I didn't really like baseball. I like going to baseball games, but like I don't like playing baseball. I was afraid of the ball, first of all. And so my dad loved the game of baseball. My dad umpires at like a junior college level. He's done big games for the Little League and things like that. So he loves it. And
side note, his dad's a serious umpire, and he's very good. He's gone to some of Danny's wrestling matches, and he gets so fired up because like the ref has no idea.
I'm like, Dad, it's a show. Relax.
A show.
But he's like, no, he's got to call it down the middle. So my dad loves umpiring. We always talk about it. Anyway, so my dad was the coach for my Little League. I was the oldest kid on the team, the tallest kid on the team, batted last, played right field.
Classic.
I think maybe I got one double like my whole career. I wasn't a very good player, and I didn't like it. I was afraid. So, yeah. But soccer was my sport, but baseball, not really great.
well, we might talk a little bit about why you kept playing even though you might not have liked it. So myself included, I was real bad at all sports. I played soccer when I was like 5, and I sat in the back corner of the field picking grass the whole time. And so I was like, Mom, I hate this. And she's like, well, let's try baseball. And so I started the next league where it's not T-ball, but where if you strike out, they bring out the tee and you get to hit
it's
it
like
off of that.
Coach pitch maybe.
Yeah, so like I just thought I should stand there until they throw enough pitches where they bring out the tee, and then I just like slam the tee, the ball would dribble down, and I would run to third base. So bad.
Wrong one.
The next season I had trouble with, like, I would swing and I would let go of the bat and I would just throw it into the outfield.
That's horribly dangerous.
Real dangerous.
How do they let you play still?
And then one season I kept telling the coach that I wanted to pitch real bad because I was that player. I would play right field. I would bat 8th or 9th, maybe even every other inning. They didn't trust me. I was so bad. So they're like, all right, let's give him a chance at pitching because I think we were winning by a lot. I pitched 4 straight balls into the dirt, like well before the plate. 4 batters in a row, walked them home with 0 strikes.
The one where it's like difficult for the catcher to get the ball.
And my coach is like, all right, bud, that was all you get. And never pitched again in my life. But so I was completely horrible. I tried basketball, was equally bad at that. I averaged like a half a point per 2 games, if that's even possible. So really bad at sports, but I kind of liked it, but I was never forced to. My parents encouraged me to, because that's kind of our culture. And we were going to talk about this. Is our culture is really driven towards sports. I don't know how I ended up in the arts and music, but I kind of just weasel my way into it, and I'm so happy that I did, and I love it. But we're talking about why so many kids play sports even if they don't want to, or is it their parents, is it the coaches, is it just society in general, especially in the States here, that we just put so much emphasis on why sports are so important.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that it's the biggest thing that we're going to touch on today is because we've seen it affect like mass, and I've seen it affect my ministry, youth ministries and things like that. And I know that you've probably seen it affect your choir.
Big time.
Is just the importance that, like you were saying, gets put on these extracurricular events and these extracurricular sports and stuff like that. But I will say one thing about that commitment level. I'm going to talk about my dad again, because I have 2 brothers. I have 2 younger brothers, and 2 of us are more athletic. Like we played soccer and basketball and whatever else. And my youngest brother is nowadays, he's very much into performing arts. Like he does theater. Like he's a big star in the local community theater. He's majoring in in drama, I guess, in college. So like he's really good at it. And that was his big thing. He's always been a very animated guy. And I remember that he would like play t-ball or baseball or whatever it was, and he was horrible. Like absolutely horrible. Like he'd close his eyes and just swing, and hopefully like it would work out. And he just like wasn't for him.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, like my dad said to him, like he's like, Jack is his name. He goes, Jack, you don't have to play baseball. And Jack was like, really? And I was like, yeah, like if you don't want to, you don't have to. And he's like, okay, dude, see you later, baseball. But like he thought like he had to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even really like my dad signed him up, and I guess he was the younger brother, so he saw us play, and maybe he was like, I got to do this or whatever. But he was like relieved when my dad was like, you don't have to play anymore.
And a lot of parents don't have that foresight to be like, oh, they don't even pay attention to like, are you really not into this? Like you don't have to do it. They'll be like, you're going. We signed you up for this no matter what. You're playing all the way through high school.
Right.
Like,
and he ended up like finding what he really loved to do.
Sure.
And he did it all through high school. He's now doing it in college. He's has a job at the local theater. He's directing like plays at the local theater. Like he's fully immersed himself in this thing that he's been able to kind of give himself to.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool. So I always commended my dad for that, because my dad is like super sports. Like he loves sports. And for him to kind of be like, you don't have to do this. Like do what you want to do. Do what you feel you're being called to do.
I think it's good to, we're not advocating against sports, because I think having an active, healthy lifestyle is of the utmost importance. We want to live for a long time. We want to be healthy. We want to have great years and not just living. So I I am a runner. Like I am very athletic now. But so if you want to instill that on your kids at a young age and let them know the importance of athletics, but I think to shove it down their throats and say you have to do this is going to set the wrong tone.
Well, I think that there's a bit of both, because sometimes like you have to kind of make a kid do something to see if they want to do it.
Right.
In anything. Like I remember like when I first started playing, like soccer is my favorite sport. That's what I played. I loved playing soccer. I played for like 18 years, and like I remember playing it the first time and I was like, I was bad at it. And I wasn't great at it, and like, my dad would push me, or my coaches would push me, or whatever. And then once I got like older into soccer, like I really started to really love it, and I really looked forward to going to practice, and I looked forward to playing in the games and stuff like that. And it really helped me shape me into, you know, kind of finding my athletic ability and things like that. But I did really love soccer, so it's just finding that balance of what is important.
I just thought of a really cool analogy based on soccer. I'm not a soccer fan. I don't really get it, but
you score
I
goals.
will admit that I don't know much about soccer. I understand how you play and how you score a goal and stuff, but I don't know the intricacies.
Intricacies.
Yep, you got it for me. This is my second podcast in a row that I couldn't say a word. But I actually just went to a game, like a professional game up in Portland.
Nice.
And I was bored out of my mind.
Sure.
I came back from getting using the restroom or getting a snack or something. And I was like, guys, what did I miss? Was it nothing? Is it still 0-0? But they're like, no, you missed all this action, this exciting stuff. But I think that goes for a lot of things in life. If you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to appreciate it. So when we come to Mass, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how the Mass works, why we're doing the things we're doing, why we're saying the prayers that we're saying, you're not going to get as much out of it. You're going to be like, what is it, 0-0? Whatever equivalent that is in Mass. You're not going to be into it. So learn about your faith, learn about the Mass, get excited and passionate about it, and you get fired up.
That brings me to this point of that we were going to talk about today is fandom. Being a fan of certain sports teams and stuff like that. What goes back to the title of our podcast, Sundays Are for Football, because Sunday is football day.
Right, and I think that's the slogan they came up with, you know, for the NFL. They're like, Sundays are for football, and dun, 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 dun. It's like,
nice.
Really? I thought Sundays were for church.
Well, I mean, and like I said, of course, there's not everybody that goes to church and things like that, but like, I've definitely seen like being a fan of your team is like the biggest priority in people's lives. Like I would always see or make the joke about like people are like, if I don't watch my team, like they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not on the couch watching them, they're going to lose. Or going back to my dad, I'm talking about my dad a lot this episode, but when he would watch the Lakers, my mom and I would always joke because he would get fired up at the TV. And my mom was like, I think he thinks they can hear him.
It's like yelling at people in movies, like horror movies. Don't go in there.
Yeah,
they're not listening to you.
Yeah, he would always be like, why aren't you passing the ball? Like, he can't hear you.
Yeah.
But like that like people just get really fired up and like that's awesome. Like get invested and be fired about being a fan. But when it comes to being a fan and like you're like, I love it when people go like, that's my team. This is my team. Like, we won today. You know, I'm like, we won today? And like, did you help? And they're like, well, I watched. But like, do we take that same ownership of like being a fan of whatever as we do as being a Catholic?
Right.
Or being a follower of Jesus? Like, you know, like, because every day we would go to Mass and be like, we won today. You know, Jesus beat sin. Like, so we win. And we get to celebrate the sacrifice and the beauty of the Eucharist every Sunday. We win.
Yeah.
But like, do people look at it like that? Do people go like, or like, how many people like we're wearing our sports shirts today and like we're a proudly rep?
Yeah, like
my team.
Again, we're not huge sports fans, but I do like the Dodgers and we like the Rams now that they're in LA. So we're repping this gear, but we're not fanatic about it. And we understand the you know the importance of getting a little bit of excitement around a team and everything. But like you said, where are our priorities? Are they?
Well, it's just, do you have that same thing for your faith?
Right.
You know, are you willing to rock like we had Joe here last week and his whole his t-shirt line, the Rep What You Believe, God Swag apparel. Like, are you willing to wear a shirt that says Jesus in giant letters on it down the street?
Right.
You know, as much as you are to wear your Dodgers or your Rams or your Green Bay Packers or whatever t-shirt down the street, you know?
Exactly. And if you're going to wear your Rams jersey to Mass, there's probably a fine line there if you should or not, but would you be still willing to wear a Joe Melendrez Godswag shirt? You should probably wear something nice, but
But yeah, but like, is it like, it almost is like when people make their identity in being a fan of a certain thing.
Correct. Yeah.
But forget then to leave out their identity in Christ.
And I think what you said about, if I don't watch my team, they're not going to win is a really big point, because that's a completely passive action. It might seem very active when you're watching your dad yell and throw things at the TV or whatever he's doing. He's getting into it, but it's not going to change anything that happens in the game. No matter what he does, no matter how loud he yells and screams, it's not going to change anything. Those players are going to do what they do. But what we don't realize is when we come to Mass, we talked about it at last episode or the episode before, it might seem like you don't have anything to do, but we're called to actively pray, and we bring all our prayers and we bring those to collectively as a congregation, and we lift them up to God. Yeah. And so like those prayers are powerful, and that's something active that we can do. Right. So what's more beautiful than showing up at Mass and being an active fan for the church and praying together? Or
not even a fan, an active player.
An active player, exactly.
Catholicism is not a spectator sport. You gotta get into the game.
Yeah.
And when we go to Mass and receive the Eucharist, that is us. The final statement that the priest says in Mass is, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Mass is that time for us to get fulfilled, get ready, hear the word of God, prepare ourselves to go out and spread Jesus' love to the world. That's what Mass is. Mass gets us set and ready. Like, Mass isn't really the game. Mass is the practice so that we can go out and play the game and like spread the faith.
Yeah.
But if you don't show up to practice, how are you going to play in the game?
That's huge. So many people don't want to show up to practice in a lot of things.
So I'll make the analogy of like when I go to my teens. Like my teens, I always make the joke that soccer is Satan's sport. Because no matter what, when I have youth mass or youth group or confirmation or whatever, and I'm like, okay, who's going to be there? I have soccer
practice.
I have
always.
this, I have that, I have whatever. And for some reason, it's always soccer.
It's always soccer.
And I love soccer, not to say that's that sport, but for some reason, it's always soccer. And
I don't love soccer. I've already said that. And so I have an even more sour taste in my mouth because it's always soccer.
And I'm just sitting there like, man, how is that possible? And there's plenty of families and kids who, like, they'll show up, and I've seen them, they're in their soccer gear at 7:45 Mass because they got a game at 10. I'm like, you know what? God bless you. Awesome that you're making Mass a priority in your life. But I tell they're like, hey, I can't go to Mass for the next couple of weeks. It's soccer season. What?
Yeah, I know.
And I always say, like, look, how many times is Mass the thing that gets cut for soccer or for I got to sleep in or for whatever it may be? There's not just sports. It could be many different things. How many times is Mass the thing that gets cut?
Right.
But how many times is Mass the thing that you cut something for?
Mm-hmm.
Almost never.
Yeah.
So it's that priority. Like, and we'll go back to this analogy of Mass, of us being players, of us being members of this congregation, members of the body of Christ, is when you say you're on a team and you don't show up, your position is empty. Right? Your team needs you to be there. That's why you have to go.
Yeah.
Mass is the same thing. When you're not there, your position is empty. God calls all of us, and it says in Scripture that God has made a place for you. Right? So when we go to Mass, like it's expected for us to be there and to be involved and to be present, and we're invited by God, and we're a member of that community.
And you're not just playing right field picking grass. You got an important, not that right field isn't not important.
In the pros, it's a really big deal.
In the pros, it's a big deal.
T-ball, nobody's hitting it that far.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're like shortstop in T-ball. That's like prime spot.
But yeah,
we're all called to that.
You matter being there. Just like you would on your sports team, it matters that you're there and involved in your faith. But people don't see it that way. They figure, I can miss it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But like, it is a big deal.
Right. And you're talking about, the commitments that these kids make, or anyone makes to church, not only just going to Mass, but we're called to minister in a lot of other ways. Mm-hmm. There's so many different things you can sign up for to be at church. So like, obviously I direct the choirs. I have an adult choir. I have a youth choir. You have youth ministry that you're directing. And it's a volunteer position, and we get that, but Lately we found that we're really struggling for members. I'm lucky if I can get 4 or 5 kids at my practices.
Yeah, my youth group is really small right now.
Right. And, maybe obviously it's cyclical, especially when you're dealing with high school kids.
Sure.
You have like a really good year and then they go off to college and you have to kind of start over again, and you might have a down year, you might have an up year, but it's been like steadily declining. And we could talk about the nuns for a while, but like why, we're talking about sports. So there's this shift in our priorities in sports affecting our numbers. And I know you have a point to make, but I think, at least when I was a kid playing sports, I never noticed that so much was on Sunday.
That was what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
is like for some reason when I played sports, everything was Saturday.
Saturday was the day.
But now, like everybody has games on Sundays, and I'm like,
and tournaments, everything, right? And practice too. I felt like I practiced maybe twice a week for baseball when I was in baseball, and these kids have practice for soccer and baseball or whatever every single day of the week.
Yeah, they're every single day they're at school, especially in high school.
Yeah, it's
nuts.
It's wild. Like I'm asking for 1 day a week for an hour and a half for a choir rehearsal, and I'm barely able to get anyone there.
Well, if I can jump in on this,
sure.
Dude, I totally understand what you're saying, because I deal with parents sometimes when in confirmation. Because confirmation is a commitment, right? It should be. You're committing to confirming your faith as a Catholic in the church. So we have a set of requirements and a class. You have to go to 1 confirmation class a week, and over the course of a year, you have to go to 8 youth events. That's not a lot. That's nothing. That's not a commitment. And you have to do 8 hours of community service.
Nothing.
Like that is literally nothing. That's the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. And parents will come at me and they're like, that commitment is too much. Like they already have so much to do. I'm like, you signed them up for ballet and they got to be there 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and you are mad that I want them 2 hours to learn about their faith? And the parents are like, that's too big of a commitment. What?
That's wild. Yeah.
And without sounding too, fire and brimstone, I'm like, I mean, this is a commitment to the eternal life here, right? Like we're nourishing our soul to be better Catholics, closer to God, because ultimately we're trying to get to heaven.
Well, let's talk about consequences, because you hinted at that. And so, what kind of consequences do they have when they don't come to these programs?
Well, that's the thing is I tell my youth leaders, because they always ask me like, what, like the ones that are there's ones that are there all the time. And my younger brother Brendan, he always would make the joke, because he was super involved when he was in high school. He'd always go, "Church is my extracurricular activity. Like everybody's got their stuff. Like church is my thing." Like so he was there every day, and I was also like that. But I always tell my team, they're like, "What's going on?" And I'll say, "Look, you got to do your homework, obviously, because if you don't do your homework, you get a bad grade. If you get a bad grade, you fail the class." Right?
Consequence.
If you don't go to practice, coach gets mad at you, you get benched, right? So you don't play in the game.
Yep.
That's consequence. Whatever. If you don't practice enough hours of dance or
music, like you're not going to get.
Yeah, if you don't do band,
you're not going to get the solo, or you're going to get cut from the band, or
or you're going to be behind, right? With church, with mass, with youth group, with whatever, there really isn't a consequence. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to invite you back the same way next week, whether you were there or not. I'm going to be excited that you're there regardless.
Even in the youth choir, you might not get the solo, but I appreciate everyone that comes every time, and I will keep inviting them back no matter what skill level. So, not really a consequence. So
there's really no consequence to not really being super involved in your faith, aside from like hell. Just kidding. My bad. But like, there's not really a consequence immediately for these people to like deal with. They're just kind of like, well, the church will be there next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this to the leaders especially, but I think it's true of everybody. You're right. You can miss mass, and you can miss youth group, or you can miss choir, or you can miss Bible study or whatever, and there's not an immediate consequence that you're going to feel right then and there.
Yeah.
But you're also missing out on the opportunity for there to be a really great reward. Right?
Amen.
Because what if that mass was something that really spoke to you? Or what if you went to youth group and you met someone and really helped them encounter Christ, or you encountered Christ in a really real way? Or, whatever. Like masses, or being involved in faith, mass, youth group, whatever, there is a huge opportunity for a great reward.
Yeah.
And if we miss it because it's just not that big of a deal,
right,
we're missing that opportunity.
And I think when we're talking about consequences, it's tough as leaders of our specific groups to discipline in a way.
Yeah.
I really struggle with choir, again, because they're coming there voluntarily. And I've asked the kids, you made a commitment to the choir. Why do I only see you once every 3 weeks, if that sometimes?
Right.
And they go, oh, well, we paid money to soccer, or we paid money to ballet, or we paid money to karate class. And so like, we don't want to lose out on that. And I go, yeah, but like you made this commitment to your faith and to this choir, and we're depending on you. We don't see you, and we're missing out, and we want you here. And I find it tough to like discipline and say, oh, if you didn't show up for practice, you can't sing at mass. And then I always feel like they're going to go, well, all right, well then bye. I'll see you later. I don't know if you feel the same way with youth group.
Oh, absolutely. Because I don't want them to be associated with a
negative thing, right?
Negative, and they don't want me there anyway. Because it's easy. Unfortunately, it's easy for like church to get that stigma and faith to get that stigma of like, oh, well, they don't want me there then. I'm like, but that's not it.
We want to be welcoming, but like,
I just want you to commit to it. I want you to give an effort to your faith. Like, and I always will say this. I'm like, Jesus gave me and you everything. He gave us everything and asked for nothing in return, right? The least that we can do is show up and give him some of our time.
Oh yeah.
This is what kids will say all the time. It's like, well, like, I don't really make a difference at church, but I make a difference at soccer, or I make a difference in the band, or I make a difference at this. Like, church doesn't matter. I don't know anything. And my buddy told me this, gave me this quote, and I loved it. And it was that God doesn't need your ability. He needs your availability.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, just show up.
That's
amazing. Just show up.
That's what God wants you to do.
Sure.
God wants you just to be there. It goes back to when we were talking about Gabe and adoration. God just wants you to be there.
Right. You don't have to worry about, oh, do I need to say this prayer? Do I need to think this? Do I need to pray this? Just be there. Just be present with him.
You being there matters to God, and it matters to the people around you. And eventually it's the same as like when you first show up to baseball practice, you're not great at baseball, right? You don't know anything. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to, like, you practice and practice and practice, and then you get better at it, and then you understand the game more, and then you're ready to play, and then you get to the all-star team, and then you get,
Oh, speaking of the all-star team, I would every year when I was playing baseball, I told you how bad I was.
Yeah. So,
but I didn't know. In my 10-year-old brain, I'm like, I am so good.
You're like, I can't wait for the list to be posted.
They would post that list, and I'd be like, let me through. No, never.
But that's everybody's like, I want to be on the all-star team. I want to get there, And like with our faith, like, are we putting in that effort to go to practice, work hard, get good at being a Catholic, loving God, serving Jesus?
Do we want to be on the all-star team of our church?
Of the sainthood?
Speaking of, we should talk about like fantasy football and like, why don't we have fantasy church? Let's take a quick break and let's talk about fantasy sports and fantasy church. All right, so we're talking about fantasy sports, and it's really escalated in the last like 10 years or so.
And it's fantasy football season right now.
It's fantasy football season. That's kind of why we're doing this podcast right now, because I feel like that's the biggest one. And football on Sundays is a big thing we want to talk about. But I played a lot of fantasy football back in the day. I probably had a league 12 years ago, and we really ramped up when I was in my mid-20s. And
you had like big money on the line.
I mean,
like $300 or whatever.
Like big money.
That's more than I have.
Sure. But at one point I was in like 4 separate leagues, and
it's exhausting.
I'm rooting for one player in one league, and I'm rooting against him in another league. It made no sense.
Chaos.
It was chaos. But what happened was my priorities shifted, and I stopped going to mass every other Sunday when I didn't have to. I talked about this previously, but like I would just spend all day watching football again, thinking that if I didn't watch my players that they wouldn't do well. You
got to support them.
You got to support those players. And again, fantasy football, it's good. It's fun. And I think the reason we started it was my brother moved to the East Coast around that time, and we didn't want to lose touch, and we wanted an excuse to keep in touch. So it's fellowship, and I think that's a beautiful thing. It's just a matter of, no matter what you're doing, is always keeping the priorities in check. And so like, are we rooted in our faith? Like when we said Gabe came over to play games, we play games all the time, board games. But do we make the board game is the focus of the night, but like the fact that he prayed afterwards and we have fellowship in Christ together, that's a beautiful thing. But I think it got a little bit out of whack in our fantasy football league for me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I only have ever played fantasy football once, and you were in the league with me. It was like
I convinced him to do it. I was like,
Yeah.
guys, we have to have like a church league all together.
Yeah,
you know?
and like I won somehow.
And I was pretty bitter about it because like I put, I was there like doing research every night and
Yeah, no, I don't even think I changed out my players. I think I maybe changed my defense once or twice. But like, and honestly, I will say, and I've been very blessed with like, my parents always made mass, like Sunday is mass. Like that's just how it is. Like there's like days, it's like ingrained in me in a weird way. Like when I wake up on Sundays, there's been Sundays where I'm like, I'm sleeping
Not
in.
today.
I'm sleeping in and I'm not going. And I'll sit there.
you even tell me that sometimes we're hanging
Yeah.
out on Saturday. You're like,
I'm like,
I can't make it
I
tomorrow.
can't make it tomorrow. My body won't allow me to
Yeah.
my body's just like, nope, we have to go.
Right.
Like my body is drawn to the Eucharist.
Yeah.
And like I have to be there. And I always feel 1,000,000% better when I go. Because I always feel like I have that mentality that like if I'm not there, like my team needs me. My team needs me to be at mass today.
They're not going to have a right fielder. They're
like, yeah, they need me. I got to go. Like someone's got to bat ninth.
Devil's going to get it inside the park home run,
Right.
man.
So I have to be there.
Sure.
So anyways, so I think that was a big reason why I didn't really pay much attention to fantasy because like everyone was like on their phones after mass, like getting like switching their players, and I was like,
It's exhausting.
I was just like,
Why don't we have like fantasy church drafts where we
for our parishes.
Well, actually, I'm a big
Or
fan
our
of the Catholic Talk Show.
Yeah.
It's a relatively new podcast, about a year old, but they just had an episode come out about this topic, and they did a fantasy draft on their podcast.
Like a pope and a saint.
Yeah, so they would throughout all time they picked like there was only 3 of them, but they picked like a pope, a cardinal, a bishop, a priest, a religious nun, a monk, et cetera, and then they're gonna have like their listeners vote on who has the best team.
Okay.
We should do like current active, like within our diocese. You got to pick a priest. You got to pick
A youth minister,
a choir
DRE,
director, altar servers.
Yeah.
And it's like if every baptism that a deacon makes, you get like +2 points.
Nice.
If an altar server throws up on the carpet, it's -5 points.
If a priest has their mic on while they're getting dressed, you lose a point.
Lose a point. Man, that would be something, right? But I mean, that's silly. Obviously, we that's getting out of hand, but like we don't take that same excitement for our faith in our church.
Right.
I think it's shifting our priorities and saying what are we passionate about? We're passionate about our faith. Why don't we have that same energy and excitement towards faith as we do with sports and our extracurriculars?
Absolutely, it goes back to like being a fan. Like, and there's nothing wrong with being a fan. Be a fan of a sports team. I'm fans of plenty of sports teams,
Yeah.
and like not like sports specifically, but pro wrestling. I'm a nut for
Right.
pro. Like I'm a monster. I'll watch it every night.
Yeah, please don't think this podcast is like anti-sports or
No.
anti-extracurriculars. It's all about priorities.
Yeah,
So.
but I mean, I got my Rams. I'm a fan of the Rams.
Yeah.
And I like enjoy. I watch and enjoy and check the stats and things like that. But it's the passion that people have for fandom, and the passion that we have is we should have the same passion we have for fandom that we do for our faith, right? We need just a passionate faith. And I'll never, like, for instance, I always would say there's a guy on my street and he had like a blow up 49ers football player that he would blow up every Sunday.
Like in his
Like, those
yard.
Christmas inflatable, right? That's
Yeah.
Rudolph or whatever. He had one that was a 49ers player. And it would like a blow,
giant.
like huge, like
Wow.
it was gigantic. And I was like, that is dedication
Sure.
to have that thing out. Because those things, I've put them up before. They're a pain to put up.
Yeah.
Very annoying. And that electricity is running,
Oh yeah.
But like, imagine, would anyone put up an inflatable like Jesus?
Buddy Jesus.
Or like would anybody like wear their cross around their neck like for everyone to see, like make it very apparent, like like everybody knows that guy is rooting for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Right? But how often is it so blatantly obvious that dude believes in Jesus? That dude is a disciple of Christ.
Right. Wearing it proudly. Wearing Godswag t-shirts, wearing crosses, whatever. Go ahead.
But above wearing it proudly, living it proudly.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
How are we acting? How are we carrying ourselves? What are we doing? Are we at mass on Sunday? Are we living it how we speak to people? Are we how we talk to people?
On the field, So hopefully if you are at soccer tournaments or softball tournaments on Sunday morning, hopefully you made it to Saturday night mass. We're upset because we're speaking from leaders that we're missing out on these kids or these adults in our programs that are missing it because of extracurricular activities. But hopefully they're finding other times to go to mass, and that's still okay. But are you still acting Are you living out your faith when you're playing those sports or doing those activities? That's important.
Yeah, and it does make a difference. Ryan and I, we spoke earlier that we went to daily mass this morning. And usually we made the joke earlier on the podcast, and a lot of people, that daily mass is always small. But this daily mass we went to today was pretty crowded.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people there. And people that we knew from and it wasn't my home parish. It was the first time I'd ever gone to this parish. It was one of those, I like daily mass sometimes because there's no music. No offense, Ryan. But
it's like the drive-through mass.
Yeah, no, but because it forces everyone to kind of to be involved and respond. Right, and I'm really bad at it because I respond slow, to myself.
I did notice that. We didn't talk about it.
I just pray quietly to myself. I'm not really outward and vocal.
I wasn't sure if it was grumpy Danny in the morning.
It's just always how I've been. I just kind of pray to myself. But I found myself progressively getting louder as mass moved on, because I felt like everyone responding together, and it was really, really quite powerful.
Yeah,
in this mass, and it made a difference that there were so many people there and so many voices, and saying the sign of peace and not having to turn and having empty pews and nobody be there.
8 pews down, and
you give them wave across, right? Exactly. But
being able to shake hands with somebody
right
next
behind
to you.
us. Yeah, it was really a cool thing. So it makes a difference when there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it goes back to that. Let's be passionate about our faith. Let's be rabid about how much we love Jesus. Just like we're rabid fans for our team, let's be rabid for our Father in heaven. Let's be fired up. Super pumped,
rooting for Jesus.
Yeah, he deserves that. He gives us all of his love. We need to give him all of our love back. So yeah, I think that's what's on my heart.
Yeah,
talking about this.
And yeah, the last thing I was talking about was just when you're playing sports, how are you living your faith, or are you, if you're playing soccer, are you getting in fights with your opponent? You don't have to pray for them in the moment when they slide tackle you, but sure. Are you being a good example of how Christ wants you to live, or are you acting, in opposition to that?
Sure.
Things can get carried away. Are you encouraging your team maybe to pray? That's going the extra step. Or are you taking the opportunity to invite somebody that might not ever go to mass? That's a great way to evangelize.
Sure. Or even praying yourself before your game.
There you go.
Right? Because there's that kind of stuff that
you can Tim Tebow it when you score and take a knee, but you can just do it by yourself as well. It's as long as you're bringing God to the field.
Exactly.
With you.
Is God involved in this part of your life? Mm-hmm. And so that's what it comes down to. I think that it's just, let's try to make our faith as big a priority as all these other priorities in our life. Because God puts us above everything. So, and a lot of the times we don't put God above everything. We put God at the bottom of the list.
Yeah. Last comment I just remembered. I wanted to talk about this earlier, but I think it's important since we are talking about sports. We've been talking a lot about the priorities of, especially in the States, mm-hmm. and our Western culture of sports. And I always relate a lot of things to music. And there's a phenomenon in music, for anyone that doesn't know. It's called perfect pitch. It's when it's something you're either born with or they're not exactly sure. You might develop it from 0 to 6 months.
Jeez.
Yeah, so if you don't get it after 6 months or a year,
how would you even know you have it?
You don't have it. That's the point I'm about to make. So it's the phenomenon is when your brain hears a note. So somebody plays a note on the piano, sings it, plays it on guitar, even if somebody hits a glass or something, that's a specific note. Your brain understands whether that's a B flat or a C or an E flat, or it just knows what note it is without knowing.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah, it's honestly a superpower. You have to cultivate it, and you have to learn about music to even be able to call it a B flat, because if you don't know music, you wouldn't know what a B flat is.
Right.
But your brain will understand it regardless, and so you either have the phenomenon or you don't. It's like 4 or 5% of the population has it, or something like that. I noticed when I went to music school that more often than not, there were Eastern cultures, like a lot of these Asian girls, they were amazing at piano. I was super jealous of them, but they all had perfect pitch. And I was like, why is it only the Asian girls? But I think it's because of the focus of our culture. We've put all our focus on sports, and I think the Eastern cultures put a lot on
the arts,
and
culture
and math and everything.
Yeah, and
right?
yes, like schooling type stuff.
Exactly. It's the less sports. So I think they find out from an early age that they have perfect pitch, and then they put them into music programs because they can excel. Now, I wonder how many quarterbacks, how many point guards out there,
how many linemen
have perfect pitch? They have no idea.
They have no idea, and they're just slamming into each other.
Right?
Can you imagine some like 330-pound linemen just like, you know what, guys, I actually have perfect pitch. And
I'm out. I'm out of here. I can hear B flats. You don't know. But so our culture is missing out on a lot of that, and just kind of analogy where like you have God's giving you this amazing gift and this opportunity, but if your priorities are in the wrong area, in the wrong place, you might be missing out on this beautiful thing that God has given you. Yeah. So take the time to explore that, and it goes beyond sports, but like cultivate all these gifts that God has given you, and allow him to speak through you, allow him to let those gifts grow, and you might find something beautiful within you.
And show up to receive them. Because you never know when God is going to, hit you with some knowledge, or hit you with a reading, or hit you with whatever that may, spark something within you that may motivate you in a really real way.
Oh yeah.
That you just never know. That's the power of God and the power of the Eucharist is you just never know.
Right.
You could take it and it could really, set you ablaze.
That's awesome
to do stuff. So
sports are good, you guys. Sports are good.
Yeah,
extracurricular activities are good.
They're awesome, but don't. The point we're trying to make is: are they ultimate, or is your faith ultimate?
Exactly.
And here's the deal: you can't change when a coach makes practice, or when you have a game, or when your kid has a game. But there's so many opportunities to get to mass and to be involved in your faith.
Yeah.
Take those opportunities. Make it, you change your schedule around if soccer practice changes, right? But do you change your schedule around to find a time to go to mass?
Exactly. So
that's
priorities, guys. Let's put the focus and the priorities in the right place, and I think all will be good. Yep. So comment in on your fantasy,
on your crazy schedule. Give us your fantasy lineup,
your fantasy lineup for your region, or your
church,
your fantasy popes, whatever you like. Or go follow the Catholic Talk Show, and they want you guys to chime in on their thing about in their fantasy football league. So support all our fellow other Catholic podcasts, the Catholic Talk Show, Catholic stuff you should know. Of course, Word on Fire is so awesome.
Mission Driven with Joe.
There you go. Mr. Joe's Father Rob has a podcast now. Yep. There's so many great opportunities to explore your faith and learn more about your faith. We're just one. Again, we don't know much, but we're telling about what we know.
We're just two Catholic dudes talking about our faith.
And hopefully you guys are enjoying this. We're coming at you with the fun. We're excited about our faith.
Super excited. About it.
So we hope you've been enjoying it. Again, if you like what we're doing, you can feel free to support us on Patreon.
Well, again, this is the big thing that we're talking about with that. Ryan, we were discussing it off camera, and Ryan got this coffee maker, but we need mugs.
Oh yeah.
So we're thinking about making Two Catholic Dude mugs. If we had Two Catholic Dude mugs, would people be interested in that? Let us know in the comments. And maybe that'll be a new Patreon reward.
Yeah, I have one person working on a new logo for us right now, but
awesome.
Not to say that has to be the only one. So if you guys want to help support our cause and you don't feel like you have anything financially to give, feel free to shoot us your own design for Two Catholic Dudes, and maybe we'll put that on a mug.
T-shirts. We're looking at all kinds of different options.
Yeah, and so and then we could use those as future opportunities if you want to be a Patreon member. Because right now we don't really have anything, and we say we're going to pray for you, and we do, but we could shoot you a mug if you're a Patreon member, or a T-shirt or something like that. But last thing about supporting us on Patreon is, again, where are your priorities? So in terms of money, make sure you're supporting your parish.
Yeah.
We have this new thing at our church called Call to Renew. I think it's the whole LA Archdiocese, and there a bunch of churches are doing it in sections. Our church is doing it right now, but they want to instill that when you give this money to Call to Renew, it's an extra program, that you don't remove money from your regular collection. This is an extra thing you're doing because you want to give. So make sure you give to those programs. You give to charities, whatever charities you want. Don't take money away from those. So if you feel like called to give any financial offerings to us, make sure that that's over and above whatever else you're doing. And we can't thank you enough for the support and all the members that we currently have.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. We just want to, the support and liking and sharing our videos and our podcasts and things like that. It means the world to us that there's people that are willing to share and all that stuff. And then on that note as well, we are available for bookings. If you want us to come to your church, come to your school, whatever, we do music, we do talks, we do workshops,
fun and games,
we do retreats. Yeah, we do everything.
Right.
We want to come and spread the good news as much as we can wherever we go. We're looking at setting up doing remote podcasts. So if we come to your parish, your retreat, whatever, we can do our podcast live right then and there. All kinds of different things. So please shoot us an email at twocatholicdudes@gmail.com. And chat with us. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and we appreciate all the great comments we've had on our social media so far. It's really ramping up, and we love connecting with a bunch of like-minded Catholics. We've had some awesome comments on our YouTube page.
Yeah,
and that really helps people find us. So keep that up, and we thank you so much for that.
And the big thing is follow us on Instagram if you have Instagram, because that's where we have our Monday. Our podcast comes out. We have Tuesday Thoughts with myself, where I share just reflections on faith that I have, and then Ryan does Psalm of the Week every Wednesday. So there's lots of stuff coming out from us. Just to keep our faith alive and moving throughout the week.
And we're going to keep ramping up more, and Instagram again is our biggest one. So we thank you for all the support that you guys have had for us. So go out there, play some sports, do some extracurricular activities, but
get in the game.
Get in the game, but get in the game of church, get in the game of your faith.
Catholicism is not a spectator sport.
Right.
So get in the game. Thank you guys always for listening, and God bless. We'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good. Peace.